Carl Jung made a revolutionary discovery that completely transforms how we understand aging, particularly for women. At 60, the soul doesn't begin to decline. It begins its greatest adventure. While society teaches us to fear growing older, Jung's groundbreaking research revealed that the sixth decade of life marks what he called the afternoon of life, a sacred turning point where the soul finally breaks free from external expectations and begins its journey toward authentic truth. For decades, you've been living what Jung termed the morning of life, focused on building careers, raising families, meeting society's demands, and proving your worth through external achievements. You've worn countless masks, played endless roles, and shaped yourself to fit into boxes that were never designed for your true essence. But at 60, something profound shifts in the psyche that Jung considered one of the most important transitions in human development. Jung observed that women who reach this pivotal age often experience what appears to be a crisis, but is actually a breakthrough. The roles that once defined you, mother, wife, career woman, caretaker, begin to feel confining rather than fulfilling. The opinions of others matter less. The need to please everyone becomes exhausting. This isn't aging. This is awakening. This is your soul finally demanding to be heard after decades of being silenced by societal expectations. If you're ready to discover the profound psychological wisdom that can transform your understanding of what it means to age as a woman, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We're exploring the deepest insights from psychology's greatest minds to help you navigate life's most important transitions with wisdom and grace. Jung called this phenomenon the transcendence of the persona, the moment when the mask you've worn to navigate the world becomes transparent and your authentic self begins to emerge. At 60, you're no longer willing to sacrifice your truth for acceptance. You're no longer content to live according to other people's definitions of who you should be. The soul has accumulated enough life experience to know what matters and what doesn't, what brings joy and what brings suffering. This isn't about becoming selfish or abandoning your responsibilities. It's about what Jung called individuation in the second half of life, the process of becoming fully yourself, perhaps for the first time ever. The energy that once went into building and maintaining external structures now turns inward, seeking meaning, purpose, and authentic expression. The soul changes direction because it's finally strong enough to chart its own course. At 60, you stand at the threshold of what Jung considered life's greatest gift, the opportunity to live from your essence rather than your image, from your truth rather than your training, from your soul rather than your circumstances. Jung's research into what he called the second half of life revealed that at 60, women often experience a profound psychological reversal that he termed the return of the repressed feminine. Throughout the first half of life, many women have had to suppress their intuitive wisdom, their emotional depth, and their natural cyclical rhythms to succeed in a masculine-oriented world. But at 60, these suppressed aspects of the feminine psyche demand recognition and expression. This return manifests in countless ways that Jung observed in his female patients. Women who had spent decades being practical and logical suddenly find themselves drawn to art, poetry, or spiritual exploration. Those who had prioritized others' needs above their own begin setting boundaries and saying no without guilt. Women who had accepted conventional definitions of beauty and worth start celebrating their authentic selves with unprecedented confidence. Jung called this phenomenon the integration of the anima, the process by which women reclaim the parts of themselves that patriarchal conditioning had forced them to abandon. At 60, The soul no longer has patience for pretense or performance. It demands authenticity, even if that authenticity challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself and what others expect from you. The physical changes that accompany this age, menopause, gray hair, wrinkles, are not signs of decline, but what Jung called the external manifestation of internal transformation. Your body is literally shedding the physical markers of your reproductive years to make space for what he termed the generative years, the time when you generate wisdom, creativity, and spiritual insight rather than children. Jung observed that many women resist this transition because society has taught them to equate their worth with youth and conventional beauty. But he argued that this resistance prevents access to what he considered the greatest treasures of human existence: the wisdom that comes only through experience, the freedom that comes only through letting go of others' opinions, and the power that comes only through knowing exactly who you are. At 60, your soul changes direction because it no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. The external validation that once drove your choices becomes irrelevant compared to the internal knowing that emerges from decades of lived experience. Jung called this shift the movement from ego to self, where the small, frightened part of you that seeks approval gives way to the larger, wiser part that knows your inherent worth. This transition often feels disorienting because everything that once seemed important, career advancement, social status, physical appearance, suddenly pales in comparison to deeper questions. What brings my soul joy? What legacy do I want to leave? How can I use my remaining years to express my truest self? These are the questions that signal your soul's change of direction. Jung identified what he called the shadow integration crisis that often occurs around 60, particularly for women who have spent their lives being good according to external standards. The shadow, those aspects of personality that you've rejected or hidden to maintain social acceptability, demands recognition at this stage of life. The rebellious teenager you never allowed yourself to be, the artist you sacrificed for practical concerns, the adventurer you suppressed for security. All these shadow aspects emerge with startling intensity. This integration isn't about becoming reckless or abandoning responsibility. Instead, Jung observed that women at 60 often experience what he called constructive rebellion, the courage to challenge systems, relationships, and beliefs that no longer serve their authentic growth. You might find yourself questioning religious doctrines you followed blindly, leaving social circles that drain your energy, or pursuing dreams you abandoned decades ago. The soul's change of direction at 60 also involves what Jung termed the reconciliation with time. In youth, time feels infinite and is often wasted on trivial pursuits or other people's agendas. But at 60, the awareness of mortality becomes a gift rather than a burden. You realize that every moment is precious, every choice matters, and every day is an opportunity to live more authentically than the day before. This temporal awareness creates what Jung called the urgency of authenticity. You no longer have patience for toxic relationships, meaningless activities, or situations that require you to betray your true nature. The soul demands that your remaining years be spent in alignment with your deepest values and most authentic desires. This isn't selfishness. It's self-preservation in the deepest sense. Jung also observed that at 60, many women experience the emergence of the wise woman archetype. This ancient archetype, found in cultures worldwide, represents the post-reproductive woman who becomes the keeper of wisdom, the guide for younger generations, and the bridge between the material and spiritual worlds. In patriarchal societies, This archetype has been devalued or feared, but Jung recognized it as one of humanity's most valuable resources. The wise woman doesn't seek to compete with youth or reclaim her former beauty. Instead, she embraces what Jung called the beauty of depth, the radiance that comes from integrated experience, the magnetism of authentic presence, and the power of someone who no longer needs external validation to know her worth. This is why many women report feeling more attractive and confident at 60 than they did at 30. Their beauty comes from within, rather than from conformity to external standards. At 60, your soul changes direction because it's finally ready to claim its full power. The accommodating, people-pleasing aspects of your personality give way to what Jung called the sovereign self, the part of you that knows its value and refuses to negotiate it away for anyone's comfort or approval. Jung's most profound insight about the 60-year transformation involves what he called the reversal of life's energy. In the first half of life, energy flows outward, toward achievement, acquisition, and adaptation to external demands. But at 60, this energy dramatically reverses direction, flowing inward toward what Jung termed the cultivation of the soul. This isn't withdrawal from life. It's the deepest possible engagement with life's meaning. This energy reversal manifests in what Jung observed as the great letting go. Women at 60 often begin releasing possessions, relationships, and commitments that no longer align with their evolving sense of purpose. They might downsize their homes, simplify their schedules, or end friendships that feel draining rather than nourishing. This isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about becoming more selective about where to invest precious life energy. Jung noticed that this letting go process often triggers what appears to be depression, but is actually what he called the fertile void, a necessary period of psychological emptiness that precedes rebirth. Just as fields must lie fallow to regenerate, the soul must release old identities and patterns to make space for new growth. The discomfort of this transition is not pathology, it's transformation. The soul's change of direction at 60 also involves what Jung termed the activation of the transcendent function. This is the psychological mechanism that allows you to hold opposing truths simultaneously, to be both strong and vulnerable, independent and connected, wise and still learning. At 60, you develop the capacity to embrace paradox rather than seeking simple answers or rigid categories. This transcendent function enables what Jung called the integration of life's experiences. All the pain, joy, success, and failure of your first 6 decades begin to weave together into a coherent narrative of growth and meaning. Nothing was wasted. Everything contributed to who you've become. This integration creates what Jung considered the greatest gift of aging, the ability to see your life as a complete story rather than a series of random events. Jung also observed that at 60, many women experience the opening of the spiritual dimension. This doesn't necessarily mean becoming religious, but rather developing what he called the religious attitude, a sense of connection to something larger than individual concerns. Whether through nature, art, service, or contemplation, the soul seeks transcendent meaning that cannot be found in material achievement alone. The spiritual opening often brings with it what Jung called the gift of presence. At 60, you're more likely to be fully present in each moment, because you understand how precious and fleeting these moments are. The anxiety about the future and regret about the past that plague younger years give way to a deeper appreciation for what is happening right now. This presence becomes magnetic, drawing others to seek your wisdom and guidance, not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned to embrace the questions with grace and curiosity. Jung's research revealed that the soul's transformation at 60 involves what he called the emergence of creative potentiality. Many women discover artistic, intellectual, or spiritual gifts they never knew they possessed. The creative energy that was once channeled into building careers and raising families now seeks new forms of expression. Jung observed that some of history's most profound creative works were produced by people in their 60s and beyond, when the soul finally had permission to fully express itself. This creative emergence often surprises women who had accepted society's message that creativity belongs to the young. But Jung argued that true creativity requires what he called the integration of conscious and unconscious wisdom, a psychological achievement that typically doesn't occur until the second half of life. At 60, you have access to both the learned knowledge of experience and the intuitive wisdom of the unconscious, creating optimal conditions for genuine creativity. The soul's change of direction also brings what Jung termed the courage of authenticity. At 60, the fear of judgment that constrains younger years begins to dissolve. You realize that the people whose opinions you've spent decades trying to manage often don't matter as much as you thought they did. This liberation from others' opinions creates space for what Jung called the authentic voice, the expression of your true thoughts, feelings, and perspectives without apology or modification. Jung noticed that women who embrace this authenticity often become what he called cultural change agents. They speak truths that younger people feel, but don't yet have the courage to express. They challenge systems and traditions that no longer serve human flourishing. They become bridges between the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future, using their freedom from conventional constraints to advocate for positive change. The 60-year transformation also involves what Jung called the reclaiming of personal power. This isn't about dominating others, but about recognizing and exercising your inherent authority over your own life. You stop asking permission to be yourself. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop diminishing your achievements or hiding your intelligence to make others comfortable. If you're finding these insights about the soul's transformation as revolutionary as we intended, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Understanding Jung's perspective on aging can completely transform how you approach this sacred stage of life, helping you embrace, rather than fear, the profound changes that await. Jung believed that this reclamation of power often manifests as what he called the elder's rebellion, not the destructive rebellion of youth, but the constructive rebellion of someone who has lived long enough to know what truly matters. This might mean leaving unfulfilling relationships, changing careers, moving to new places, or simply refusing to tolerate situations that diminish your spirit. The soul changes direction at 60 because it finally has the wisdom, courage, and freedom to choose its own path, rather than following the routes prescribed by others. Jung's ultimate revelation about the soul's transformation at 60 centers on what he called the completion of the individuation process. This isn't an ending, but a beginning. The moment when you finally become fully yourself after decades of becoming who others needed you to be. The soul changes direction because it no longer needs to seek itself. It has arrived at the profound recognition of its own inherent wholeness and value. This completion brings what Jung termed the gift of fearlessness. At 60, you've survived enough losses, disappointments, and challenges to know that you can handle whatever life brings. This isn't reckless bravado, but deep confidence born from experience. You no longer make decisions based on fear of what might happen, but on clarity about what aligns with with your authentic self and highest values. Jung observed that this fearlessness often manifests as what he called the embrace of mortality. Rather than denying aging or clinging desperately to youth, women who successfully navigate this transition develop what he termed befriending time. They understand that their remaining years are precious precisely because they are limited, and this understanding infuses every moment with greater meaning and intensity. The soul's change of direction also brings what Jung called the wisdom of paradox. At 60, you understand that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. You can hold joy and sorrow simultaneously, embrace both solitude and connection, accept both your strengths and limitations without needing to resolve these seeming contradictions. This paradoxical thinking creates what Jung considered true wisdom. Jung believed that women who fully embrace this soul transformation become what he called carriers of the collective wisdom. They embody the accumulated knowledge of their culture while remaining open to new possibilities. They become bridges between generations, helping younger people understand what truly matters while remaining curious about emerging perspectives and changes. The practical implications of Jung's insights are profound. At 60, you're not declining or becoming irrelevant. You're entering the most psychologically sophisticated stage of human development. Your brain has literally rewired itself to integrate information more holistically. Your emotional intelligence has reached its peak. Your capacity for both independence and deep connection has matured to its fullest expression. Jung's message to women approaching or experiencing this transformation is revolutionary. Society's narrative about aging is not only wrong, but harmful. At 60, your soul doesn't begin to diminish. It begins to shine with its full brilliance. This is not the sunset of your life, but what Jung called the noon of existence. The moment when all your powers align in service of your truest, most authentic expression. The soul changes direction at 60 because it finally knows where it's going, toward the full realization of everything you were always meant to become. This is not an ending, but the most magnificent beginning of all, the beginning of living your truth.